And we are live. Welcome to NFL World, where all the hustle and bustle. But for today, we're not just going to talk about the NFL. We're going to start with Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders was the head coach at Jackson State University, which is an all-black school. Okay, and the opportunity arose that he was going to get major head coaching interest at other universities when Jackson State went undefeated this year. And they did. Sanders was the only coach to bring them to an undefeated record and actually bring them to some sense of relevancy. So when he announced to his team, which you can find this on YouTube, that he announced to his team that he took the job at Colorado, the University of Colorado, he told his players, and they were very emotional because you invest so much time in being a head coach and trying to get these players where they want to go and trying to get these players out of a bad situation. And Dion got a lot of flack, which is an old term that is used. It means he got people pestered him. People were upset at him the fact that he would go and say, you know what, I'm going to go take another job. Now, this is not shocking that he would go and do another job because Colorado State has the funding that Jackson State just didn't have. And you're not inhibited. This is a 5 grade school. Like, this is a school that people are gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, a lot 5-star recruits are gonna wanna come here." Like, they were doing that at Jackson State, but they just didn't have the funding to bring them, so it made it harder. But then I started seeing something from ESPN, mostly. We're gonna talk a lot about ESPN because to me, this didn't end the show. ESPN was just going on their way trying to destroy everything that anyone else liked. And Deion Sanders was a topic of conversation, and they said Deion turned his back on the Black Americans or the Native American people or African American people, or whatever they want to describe fit their narrative. And one person asked that question at the press conference, the introductory press conference that Deion had. And Deion said, I left Jackson State. I did not leave the African American people. And it sounds like he was joking, but he wasn't really. He was saying that because people were saying, well, he's just doing this for the money. I don't know if you ever noticed, Dion gave most of the money he made from coaching his staff. Because here's the hard facts of being a high school or even a college coach. The hard facts are this. When you're a high school or a college football coach or as a head coach, you'll make money. Absolutely. But your assistants, your offensive and defensive won't make the money. They won't make as much, or if anything. So it makes it a really difficult way to live. So a lot of these coaches, they get bigger contracts on purpose, not because they think that's what they're worth, but because they're trying to get their staff money. And therefore they just dish it out of the contract that they made. That's what they do. And that's what a lot of these coaches do. And I remember people were saying that we just don't make enough money, and our coach, which was unprecedented when he started to do this, started giving money out of his own pocket so we could afford a new car, afford the rent, or whatever. That was a whole thing. But they made it sound like as if Dion was turning his back on those kids, on those people. He wasn't. Dion was doing this because he felt he has a much bigger platform to go and teach these kids how to become men. And that's what Dion was doing. They made it sound though that Dion had decided to do this on his own. Never did. Just said, nah, I'm gonna do this the way I want to do it. And then people got mad that Dion went and said, I'm gonna go and bring my luggage with me, which what he meant by that was I'm gonna bring players who want to transfer from Jackson State to Colorado. I'm gonna do it. And everyone got mad at him for saying that. You're not giving off people a fair chance. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's giving your people a fair chance. He's saying, if you want to be the starter here, or you want to be on this team here, you gotta show me. This happens in the NFL all the time, where you got this guy or this kid who was drafted by the previous regime, and that regime is now out. They're not coaching there anymore. That group of coaches don't have to honor what the previous coaches did. They don't have to. Some do, some don't. Now, it's the point of I honestly watched the 60-minute interview that Deion Sanders did a couple months ago. I watched it, and it was showing how much Deion Sanders was really investing his own money and time and trying to get these kids to go in the right direction. He's like, look, I know I came into the league, the NFL, and I was named primetime Deion Sanders. That's what I was. I know that. I know that because I was really good. I know that, and people gave that. And I was doing all kinds of various things. But I want you guys to come in to school, have a great attitude, sit in the front of your class, don't wear one sock up, one sock down, don't wear a sweatshirt underneath your jersey. I want you to go and understand there is no such thing as swag in what we're going to do. Your swag's going to be earned in terms of you're going to show me what you can do. And that's what he's doing. But I really think that why he took the Colorado job is he wants to reach more people. And he wants to try and say, hey, yes, I helped that. But I know if I go here, I can help those people out. And that's what he's doing. So he shouldn't have gotten all the flack that he did. But he was for no reason. Because people are selfish and jealous of what he does. For Dion, he came in, no experience as a head coach, no experience as a coach, period. But he knew how to lead people. Like in that 60-minute interview, there was talk about the grass of the field was overgrown. And Dion kept saying, I want this grass cut, I want the grass cut, I want the grass cut. And they're like, yeah, we'll get around to it. When Dion said he wanted the grass cut, it was getting cut, as in he was going to bring his own lawnmower and cut the grass himself if he had to. And he did on several occasions. But that was because he believed so much. It wasn't that he didn't care. He cared, obviously. That's what he did. There shouldn't have been as much flack as they were, or as it was, or is. You can't blame Dion for doing what he did. When he said bring his own luggage, I'm having a few players transfer, including my son, who was our quarterback, who was my quarterback at Jackson State, and if you wanna be here, beat him out. If you want to have your job, you gotta show me that you can do that. Because if you can't, I know he can do it. I'll still have him fight for the job. But if you think you can beat him, then beat him. If you can't, well, no. You don't have to be here. If you wanna transfer out, transfer out. A lot of players, a lot of coaches say the same thing, but it's just not as documented as this is. They say, "Huh," like, I remember when the '85 Bears were getting created, Mike Ditka came in as the coach in '81 and said, "The great thing, guys, is we're gonna go to the Super Bowl in the next 3 or 4 years. The sad thing about it, the bad thing about it, not many of you are gonna be here to see it." What he meant by that is, he's not meaning that you're gonna be passed away or whatever. You're gonna be he means you're not gonna be on this team. Sorry, but I've seen the way you play. You guys don't play. You don't play smart, you don't play right, you do everything your own way, and you don't play together. That's what Dion was preaching, and yet everyone is having problems with what he's talking about. They won't have problems if he wins. They'll have problems though if he doesn't win immediately, because they're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, Dion knows what he's doing. It worked there. He feels it's gonna work in Colorado. It worked at Jackson. He feels it works at Colorado. We'll see if he's right." Moving on to the Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons have ruled out Kyle Pitts for the remainder of the year. He had the torn meniscus, or I mean torn MCL. Likelihood is it's hard enough to play on a knee injury when it's a sprain. When you have a torn injury and you're not going anywhere, why even play him? That makes no sense anyway. Plus, they weren't even really targeting him, which is what they should be doing. You got rid of Calvin Ridley for this. You gotta figure that out. Use him. He's a big body tight end who can play wide receiver, who has a vertical that he's gonna out-leap a corner. He's gonna out-physical a linebacker. He's gonna outrun a linebacker. He's gonna out-physical a safety. Like, use him. Next up is Jimmy Garoppolo is not gonna have surgery on his foot. Garoppolo had broken his foot in the game versus Miami. He had supposedly broke it in 3 different places. He is not going to have surgery, could return in about 6 to 8 weeks. Now, 6 to 8 weeks, you think that's good. That's a whole lot of time. When you have 5 games to go, that means the quickest that you can come back might be wild card week. And depending on who we face, if we face, like right now, you're third, you can easily drop and be out of the playoffs in that time frame. Easily. Because Seattle is right behind you. You got to face Tampa, then you got to face Seattle. These are matchups that are not very favorable without Garoppolo. And quarterbacks are going to have, and the quarterback Brock Purdy that you do have is going to have to figure that out on his own. And it's not gonna be pretty, but can you find a way to win based on your defense? We'll see. But when your earliest time frame to return might be wild card week, and the latest according to the timetable they gave was the NFC Championship game. That's that's a long time you're expecting a rookie to do that, a 7th round rookie. That's a lot of pressure. And we'll see if he can hold it. see if he can figure that out and deal with it the best he can. The Eagles have placed Robert Quinn on IR. He's going to miss 4 games with a knee injury. This is bad if you're Eagles. Not as in, oh my gosh, you don't have people who can play. No, you got people that can play, absolutely. Just the thing that Robert Quinn can do. When he was in Chicago and when he was in Dallas, the thing he kind of rejuvenated his career to the point he even got the nickname the Black Cobra. A takeoff Kobe Bryant's nickname, the Black Mamba. And the reason why they were calling him the Cobra was because it felt like he had no bones in his body and he could lean in a way that it looked like he was maybe a foot off the ground, and yet he's getting by people because it looked like he had no bones. He was just able to turn at different angles and beat you with speed and everything like that. So him going to Philadelphia, but I have to say I was very disappointed in that because I thought, I wasn't predicting the Cowboys would go get him, but I didn't think the Bears would trade him. So Robert Quinn went to Philadelphia. He's had minor success and is now out for 4 games. That puts him back as soon as week 17, where that's not a favorable matchup for you. You face the Giants, you face the Cowboys on Christmas Eve. And that's no guarantee he'll be back in 4 weeks. That's just hopefully that might be. We'll see. But injuries, especially at that defensive end position, that gets very difficult. The latest on Odell Beckham Jr. Actually, no, let's first do this. The Rams have claimed Baker Mayfield off the waiver wire. And according to a report we got this morning, the Rams were the only team to put in a claim for Baker Mayfield. Now, my understanding is that no team really wanted to do it because of the salary, but that still doesn't make a whole lot of sense because the salary wasn't a whole lot. It was like about, I don't even remember it. It wasn't a whole lot in terms of salary. We all thought the 49ers were going to do it. The 49ers had signed Josh Johnson, who has his 4th stint with the team in a very journeyman-like career. So Baker Mayfield is now there, and everyone's like, "Well, he could start." I wouldn't. I wouldn't. There's no reason for him to start. Why do that? If anything, what you do, you give him a week or 2 to learn it, and then you see what happens. Because you're not going anywheres anyway. Like, you're not going to the playoffs. The only thing you can do is, well, maybe with Baker, get some few wins here and there, and then we'll see what happens in the off season. Never know. I wouldn't start him, but I'm not Sean McVay. I don't make these decisions. Lamar Jackson has a PCL sprain. He's out for 1 to 3 weeks. That's the best bet. It's from the way it looked like you couldn't walk on it. And the thing for the Ravens is you do face Cincinnati again. You want Lamar Jackson on the field, but you don't want him hurt either. The Titans had made news on Tuesday as they fired their general manager, John Robinson. The reason of why Robinson was fired, from what I can gather, is Vrabel wanted A.J. Brown to not be traded. Robinson did it anyway. And I think that's where it started to go sideways, was there was no reason to trade A.J. Brown. Because from all that I can grab and understand, A.J. Brown said, I was willing to take a team-friendly deal. I was willing to do that. But they weren't even considering it. And if Vrabel wanted me here, why didn't Robinson? Now, the likelihood is Robinson will get another general manager job. But with if you were to say, let's say this, let's say you're a general manager and I'm a coach, and we have this player who in a year is going to be up for a contract. And I go and I say, man, I really want this player around. I want this guy here long term. And then you go and decide, nope, that's not going to happen. In fact, I'm going to trade him. What am I supposed to say? They asked Vrabel, and Vrabel was like, I don't know. I don't know. It's mind-boggling that Robinson would even make a trade like that without. Now, I guess he wouldn't need Vrabel's permission, but he does need to get them all on the same page. And suggesting you guys are all in the same room during draft night, which is when the trade took place, Vrabel should have been in on it and should have understood what was going on. And he probably would have went and said, well, then, if you're going to do that, give me the best receiver in the draft, which might not be Traylon Burks. We don't know. But that's a whole lot of, we have no idea, but let's trade our best receiver anyway for Rob, and basically have Robert Woods be our guy. Not Smith. Now, the latest on Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ, the last week, has been going to visit with the Giants, the Bills, and the Cowboys. He visited with the Giants on Friday and a little bit on Saturday. Then he flew to Buffalo, visited with Buffalo on later on Saturday and on Sunday. Then flew to Dallas and visited them on Monday and on Tuesday. I cannot explain the itinerary for the Giants and the Bills. The Cowboys itinerary came, he flew down, he met with the Joneses, then he would go to the Mavericks game between the Mavericks and the Suns on Monday night. Tuesday, he would meet with the coaches and the players committee for the Cowboys, which everyone knew would probably go well. Now, there's a lot of problems with this because Jerry Jones went on 105.3 The Fan, which is a radio station in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and said he had concerns. This is the first time Jerry Jones has admitted that there's concerns. Before he was saying, "Oh, I think Odell could help our team this year." This is what everyone wanted to help the team this year. And Odell said, "I want a team like I want multiple years." And we heard earlier from ESPN $20 million a year. That seemed unlikely, suggesting we're in December. Then I heard $13 million. That seems unlikely because we're in December. Also because of the fact you're injured. And we don't know when you're coming back. And that you're not training or rehabbing with the team, you're rehabbing with your guys. So then the report came out on Friday that not just is OBJ not going to practice necessarily, he's not gonna even run a route. He's not gonna have his cleats with him. So I saw this comment yesterday, and it says, "OBJ's just there for the free food." And I kinda laughed at it, but then I kinda thought at it, and I was like, it's not as outrageous as anything because the guy's not running. 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, his team said that he was cleared, medically cleared, that he could run, that he could do these things. And the Giants, the Bills, and the Cowboys all tried to have him run, and he refused to. At what point, if you're Odell, do you go and say, I'm not going to get what I want? Might as well say, I'll try and run a couple routes here. Like they were allowing him to visit the trainers. I don't even know if they were allowed to have him visit the doctor for the teams. I don't know about that. I know the trainers they were allowed to. He was allowed to visit. Oh, he was going to allow them to pull him away and visit and to see how that knee was doing. But like everyone's like, it just doesn't make any sense. And then it becomes, well, is he cleared to run? The answer's probably no, because he hasn't cut on it. He hasn't, in terms of he's not breaking in routes. He's not doing anything. And I think if you're the Cowboys, or any team, if you want to do this, you go to Odell and you say, look, we'll do a 3-year contract. We're fine with that. But it's going to be prorated. That's the word I've been hearing a lot lately. It's prorated. Prorated as in the contract's going to be heavily incentive based. And if you prove in the next year that you're Michael Gallup when healthy, then great. We're going to prorate your contract this year. Because the report came out that knee is not where it should be. I heard a report that said that he could be back as soon as the playoffs. I don't think that's accurate. He may play or he may be active, but he won't be playing that much. Or if he does, very few and very simple things that he would be asked to do. And the media is trying to say, well, why wouldn't Jerry Jones do this? It's because he doesn't want to spend the money. No, Jerry's willing to spend the money. But Jerry's like, this guy's not even healthy. He's not healthy. He's not ready. That knee's not 100% at all. He's not running. And that's the hardest thing. Because a lot of people are like, is Jerry Jones just doing this on purpose? No. Odell refuses to run a route to see if he can. He's like, well, I'll do it after I'm done. Doesn't work that way. Does not work that way. Maybe it would have worked like, if you were healthy, that's a different story because we know you're healthy. If you didn't have the injury last year in the Super Bowl, maybe we wouldn't be asking that question. But the Cowboys are asking that question. Other teams are asking that question because they're like, he refuses to run. Therefore, we may have to look at other options because, yes, he's hurt, but we know he will run. He won't worry about it. He'll run. Where Odell's, he's not. He's not. He refuses to. And I think that the Bills, the Giants, and the Cowboys are like, how can you refuse to run unless you're not medically cleared? In the next day or so, Odell's going to make up his mind on what team he wants to join. But at what point is he going to play for that said team? And finally, as you saw in the title, the Washington Post posted a picture of Jerry Jones at the age of 14. Now, this is a long conversation we're going to have here. Longer than what we already have. It's probably going to be a little over an hour by the time this video ends. The Washington Post posted a video about a week ago, and I've tried to hide it for like about a week. They posted a video of Jerry Jones. ESPN even put a circle around his face at the age of 14. Now, this picture was taken back in 1957. In 1957, desegregation was difficult to find. If you and especially much more difficult in the South, which is where this picture was taking place. Jerry Jones grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. He was 14 years old in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is south, very deep south. And you can hear all the stories everyone says during that time frame, during desegregation, the hardest places to do it was the South because people were not embracing it at all. Like it was getting at least a little bit of an embrace. I mean, it was embraced better in the North than it was in the South. That's the best way I can put it. Jerry Jones has answered this various ways, but he's done it for the last week and a half. This has probably come out in about, I don't know, 12 days, 14 days or so. And he said it in that time frame, he's probably had good 10, 12 interviews at that time. And he's talked about it in probably about 10 of them. And he said, look, yes, I was there. I'm not denying that. I'm saying I was there. I was part of the high school football team. My head coach said, don't be there. Don't go there. Jerry said, I went because I was curious. Now, I'm not saying Jerry Jones was not in that picture. Absolutely, he was. But we don't know why he was there. You see, we are speculating again. And I don't like it when we have to speculate. Speculating is the worst thing. And you can find the picture. If you type in Washington Post Jerry Jones, you'll find the picture. It's an old picture. There's a lot of people, and you can see Jerry Jones somewhere in there as a 14-year-old boy. When that picture was taken, 1957, 65, 66 years ago, Jerry Jones is 14 at that time. He's 80 in 2022. There's a statute of limitations with these things. But my question, I'm not even going to get into that part yet. My question, I got a two-part question. The first part of this question is, how did Washington Post get this picture from 1957? And my second part of it is, why they decide to post it now. It doesn't make any sense. It's not relevant now. It's not relevant anything. It's just tearing a guy down and ruining the guy's legacy. It's not relevant now. And I'm going to show my age here a little bit. There's if you've ever watched the show Little House on the Prairie, that was based off a book series. The character Laura Ingalls Wilder was actually a person. She wrote this all down. And the way that she described people of another race at the time was acceptable because she grew up in the 1800s. At the time, it was acceptable. Now it's not, obviously. So she used a lot of words that we wouldn't use today, or we shouldn't use today. But these books were #1 bestsellers. They had won a lot of awards. And just over the last 10, 15 years, all those awards and bestsellers have been taken away from the books, and you can barely find the books to this day. You can't find them. That was because the language that was used at the time to describe people of another race wouldn't fly today. But there's a statute of limitation. In my opinion, there's a statute of limitations. The statute of limitations is Jerry, or in this case, Laura Ingalls Wilder, when she wrote the books of The Little House on the Prairie, when she did it, she grew up in the 1800s. That was the way they talked about it. That was the way they used how they discussed it. That was the way it was done. What I'm trying to say is this. Jerry Jones, in this case, the picture is 65, 66 years old. Why are we doing it now when the statute of limitations, in this case, don't get me wrong, it's still a terrible event. It's absolutely horrible. But the statute of limitations to put this out now, and now I understand if this picture was sent out in 1980 or 1989 when Jerry Jones bought the team. But in 2022, when he's 80 years old, his kids are in their 50s, 60s, or something like that, that just doesn't make sense. And then they tried, the Washington Post, the people who wrote the story, tried to make it sound like Jerry Jones was a racist or a white supremacist. We have to be very careful about putting that word on people because you can't, there's no way to show them that you're not. Okay? That's the best. That's what I've heard of a lot of people say too. There's no way to show you you're not. You can't, because either you say it, people won't believe you. In fact, they'll believe the opposite. Or you don't say it, and they'll still think that you are. And there's a lot of examples of these. But let's stick with the Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott. Back in 2017, when Zeke was a second-year player, the NFL was investigating an incident that involved Ezekiel Elliott, and his girlfriend at the time. and it was an incident that happened when they were in college. If I remember correctly, it was when they were both a freshman, if I remember correctly. And the police were called, and they showed up, and supposedly they were bruises on his girlfriend's arm. But the cops found little to no evidence about it. They couldn't find any. So therefore, there was no charges pressed, and it ended there. At least that's what everyone thought. So when Zeke Elliott went into the NFL, he thought that was all behind him. In 2017, the NFL decided that they wanted to look into it. Why? I don't know. To me, that was a college matter. You've done a lot of things in college that you obviously regret, which is what I'm going to get into about Jerry Jones' age in the picture momentarily. When Jerry Jones was 14, a lot of people make mistakes at 14. Same thing when you're a teenager. You make a lot of mistakes. You do. Sorry, that's just the way it is. But and for Zeke Elliott, it was the same. He made a mistake, but there was no evidence to say that it did happen. There was no evidence by it. So fast forward to 2017, the NFL decides to look into it, and they bring in a I don't know if she was the best way to describe her position, because I don't even remember it fully, was she had been a part of domestic violence cases, and so she knew the signs, she knew everything, she would have the evidence, she had everything. I don't know if she was a sergeant or something, I don't know. So, she had a course of interviews with Ezekiel Elliott's girlfriend, and after the course of interviews, she went to the commissioner, Roger Goodell, and said, "No suspension for Ezekiel Elliott. There's not enough evidence, or there's no evidence." To which the people in the media that went and called up and said, or called and had some people they knew higher the higher ups in the NFL and said, "You better be right. Because if you put this on him, you put this word racist, domestic violence, abuser, or something on him, that's never going to go away. So you better be right. Because if not, you'll ruin this guy's life." They did it anyway, and still to this day, 5 years after the fact, who has no sponsorships? Ezekiel Elliott. Because people don't want to align themselves with him. Because of that. Definitely people would have if this wasn't taking place. But they didn't. When you use racism or various other words that can't be taken away because people are always going to see you as such. And that's what we're in this situation for. Because Washington Post tried to make Jerry Jones racist or a white supremacist. But Jerry Jones was 14 years old. And we've all photobombed before. Accidentally, anyway. Or maybe it was purposeful, but we've all done it. Maybe that's what happened here. You wouldn't know. Because as much as you know, he could have been there because he was against it, or he was just curious. You don't know. Because a still photo is not going to tell you anything. Which leads me to ESPN, because ESPN, for whatever reason, I still don't understand this. And me and my brother talk about this all the time. I'm like, I don't understand why they have a person who does one sport talk about another sport. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, if there's a basketball player and he's talking about golf, it doesn't make sense because he's not fully intelligible or in, intelligible about that said subject. That there's better people that you can get for that subject that people are going to care about. And they had good old Jay Williams, who was a basketball player. They had good old Jay Williams go and decide, you know what? I'm going to talk about this issue. Are you kidding me? You're going to talk about this issue? You're not a football player or someone in the media in terms of you're in that front office of the NFL. You're not. You're a basketball player or you're a former basketball player. Why are you talking about something that is not in your league? And it all started because LeBron James went and started to say, you asked me all these questions about Kyrie, but you didn't ask me any question about Jerry Jones. But because you're not in the same league. LeBron, I'm going to tell you this way. LeBron, as great as LeBron is here. The Cowboys are here, and Jerry Jones is somewhere in that gap. Maybe even a little higher than the Cowboys. And I'm not trying to make it sound like LeBron is not excellent at what he does. He absolutely is. But the NBA is here. The NFL is here. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because the NFL is so much bigger than the NBA. There's more viewership. People care more. I mean, the NBA, there's a lot of people that watch, absolutely, but there's only more people that watch the NBA after the NFL season ends. Because the NFL season, everyone has to say, I like the NBA, but I really need to watch the NFL. Like, that's a must-watch thing. It wasn't like that. For many years, when you had baseball, it was always, the NBA is important. I have to go watch Michael Jordan. Or, baseball's on, I have to go watch this team, this team, this team. But when the NFL took over that, it's now this like the NBA is like, yeah, we gotta watch this, but we really need to go watch the NFL. So when LeBron goes and says, why didn't you ask me a question about Jerry Jones? Because you're not in the same league, and Jerry Jones has answered it in 7 different ways, and there's a statute of limitations of what's happening here. But the best way I can explain it is this. We were all 14 years old once, or we're all going to be 14 years old. That's the way it is. That's the way world is. We're all 14 at one point, or going to be 14 at one point. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Everyone does. And you're going to make more mistakes. I have things that I regret completely. Absolutely. Everyone does. But that's what the mistakes. You correct them and you move on. And yet we're in this position of blaming everybody. People that aren't even living anymore, we're blaming. I'm sorry. They're not even alive anymore. And when you go and say, well, Jerry Jones is a white supremacist because he hasn't hired a black head coach. First off, he would only be a white supremacist if he doesn't have black players on his team. He does. His quarterback is biracial. Okay? So that's definitely not it. He's not racist or because he wouldn't. He's had so many black players on his team. To put this in perspective, Jerry Jones' favorite players were Tony Romo, Des Bryant, DeMarcus Ware, and Jason Witten. Two of those guys, and Michael Irvin, those were his five famous best players. Or the players he loved the most. And Michael Irvin, Des Bryant, and if I remember correctly, DeMarcus Ware did the same. All went into defense of Jerry Jones, saying that no, because even if he was that way when he was 14, 60 years difference, he's not the same guy. But the article tried to make Jerry Jones that because he didn't hire a black head coach. I'm going to finish with this part of it. Jerry Jones was going to hire Dennis Green, the late great Dennis Green, who was the coach of the Minnesota Vikings. You know, the famous rant, they are who we thought they were and we let them off the hook. That was Dennis Green. Dennis Green was going to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't fully understand the full story. If I remember correctly, I think it was because he got the job in Minnesota. So that kind of fell flat at the time. Or he got out of coaching. I don't remember which one. I'll have to look that one up in more detail. But the one I'll give, kind of my Dennis Green-esque story, was Marvin Lewis. When Jason Garrett's contract was not re-upped, he didn't get a new contract. They were going to hire a new coach, go in a different direction. That coach was going to be Marvin Lewis. Marvin Lewis, they practically gave him the contract and said, put your name on it and let's go to work. He was going to be the coach. The one bump in the road for that was this. He wanted Hugh Jackson as the offensive coordinator. That's what he wanted. And the Cowboys and the Joneses said no because Kellen Moore, who had taken over that responsibility, had did a great job. His first year, they led the league in yards. And they were in the top 10 in scoring, which they hadn't been in a while at that point. So the Cowboys were like, no, we feel Kellen Moore is going to be we want Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. We think he's that good. But Marvin Lewis was like, well, if I'm not able to bring in Hugh Jackson as the offensive coordinator, I'm not taking the job. To which the Cowboys said, fine, then don't take the job. And they hired Mike McCarthy. So was Mike McCarthy the rebound hire? Yes. Yes, he was. Because they were going to hire Marvin Lewis. But he wanted Hugh Jackson. The Cowboys said no. So it was not like Jerry Jones was not willing to hire a black head coach. Remember, these are the people who also said that Jeff Saturday shouldn't have gotten the job as the Indianapolis head coach, and therefore Jim Irsay is a racist. He's not. He's not. Perception sometimes prevents reality. When you're perceived as something, whether you're a racist or worse, those things don't go away because people will perceive you as the rest of your life. Now, maybe Jerry Jones was, or maybe he is a racist. Maybe he's not. Or maybe, quite possibly, he was just curious. And that's how the NFL world is.